Welcome to Transparency with Diana B., a podcast from wealthmanagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. In this podcast, we explore some of the deepest struggles and hardships that many advisors face and bring these issues out into the open so that others may find healing. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to overcome the stresses and anxieties as Diana draws from years of expertise and guest experts to manage the personal challenges of advisors.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Transparency with Diana B., a podcast by wealthmanagement.com. My name is Diana Britton, and I'm the managing editor of wealthmanagement.com. For those of you who are new to the podcast, each episode focuses on a personal development issue facing financial advisors and financial services professionals. Guests join me to talk about their journey dealing with the struggle and how they found healing through that. My guest today is Brian Walsh Jr. He's a senior financial advisor at Walsh and Nicholson Financial Group in Wayne, Pennsylvania. Brian, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, Diana, for having me. Great to be here.
So Brian is going to talk today about some of the personal trauma he's experienced throughout his life that ultimately led him to have thoughts of suicide and a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. I want to start by saying that Brian, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're in a much better place today. You have two beautiful girls. You're part of a growing advisory team. I mean, we're so glad that you're here, that you got through that rock bottom time in your life, and that you're willing to share your story with us. You know, there might be some listeners out there who are still in a very dark place. Haven't dealt with their personal trauma the way you have. And my hope is that this might help them to seek support and healing. I think you told me that it's just been really important for you to talk about the issues, the things that you went through, rather than, sort of keeping them bottled up inside. I mean, talking about it was really what helped you get over the hump, so to speak, and seek help. Just tell us a little bit about childhood, how you became interested in the military, the Navy. I know you were about to go into the Navy SEALs program. What happened during that time in your life?
So, yes, I am in a much better place today than I was, even 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And my childhood was great. I had great upbringing, unbelievable family, from my mom to my dad, brother and sister, everybody, very supportive family. My father was a firefighter and, when he was younger, and he was injured, pretty badly in a fire. His face is all skin grafts. He has an unbelievable story of his own. That's truly, really breathtaking. And growing up with him was very unique in the sense that he always instilled an incredible work ethic in you. Nothing, he never made anything easy. He made you earn it, whatever you had. And he taught me and my siblings those kinds of life lessons. And, I really think a lot of what he experienced shows through in who I am today, who my brother and sister are today. And my mom was just always the rock, of the family. She was very calming and, just very, very supportive. And the dynamic that those two were able to play in my life and and again, my brother and sister really shaped who we are, and always emphasized giving back to people. My brother, sister, and I are in a, grew up in a position where, they paid for our college, right? They were able to pay for us to play sports and go do activities and things that a lot of kids, unfortunately don't have the luxury to be able to do. And my dad and mom always emphasized the importance of giving back. Every year, multiple times a year, we would go to different places to feed the homeless or just help out in any way that we can in different charitable organizations throughout the Philadelphia area. And that really carried over into, my life, even today, but more so in how I wanted to in how I viewed what I wanted to do with the rest of my life when I was thinking about different careers. And, you know, I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, ended up playing collegiate golf, probably could have played collegiate basketball, but that's for another day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just always had that kind of regimen in place where, you know, I went to practice, ate well in high school, never drank, didn't take a sip of alcohol, never done a drug in my life, was always just kind of like this clean edge kid. And a lot of that came from my parents, right? You know, they instilled discipline in you, and if you wanted something, you had to go out and work for it. And if I wanted to go play golf in college or basketball in college, you know, I had to work for it and earn it. And that mentality has been my mentality in everything I've done throughout my life. And when I was thinking about the military, that thought really started to come into play when I got to college, more so early on in college. And I had gotten into mixed martial arts at the time and was new to it. I was just kind of dabbling in it a little bit. And the people that I was training with, a lot of them were firefighters, police officers, military members, and the head instructor was actually a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL. And, you know, he never told any of us that. And then I went to his house for dinner one night, and I saw a picture, and I said, were you Navy SEAL? And he said, yeah. And we ended up having a great conversation about it. And, you know, from that conversation on, that's what I wanted to do. And it was a way to give back, a way to really push yourself. And there's no guarantee you make that, right? It was, you make it through that training.
Yeah, that
I just knew that was, it's unbelievable.
It's very hard to get into.
It's incredible. And, you know, there's no saying I would have made it through. I like to think I would have, but, you know, it's a very, very difficult program. But I knew that is the path I wanted to go on. I wanted to be if I was going to go in
give it a shot.
If I was going to be in the military, I wanted to do it. I wanted to be the best there was in the military, right? That was my mentality, and that's how I saw the Navy SEALs. So throughout college, I continued training mixed martial arts. You know, I did a bunch of research on the military and ultimately decided that's what I wanted to do. And I graduated college with the intent of going to BUDS, which is the Navy SEAL kind of boot camp, in the fall, winter of 2010, it would have been. And, you know, that was my plan. I enlisted in the Navy at that point, the day after I graduated from college and was ready to go. And was going to move down to South Carolina to train and just get ready and take my career from there and do what I wanted to do. And, you know, that was my plan. And then just having my that work ethic, the discipline, the drive to do that, the eagerness to give back and protect was something that my parents instilled in me at a very young age.
Yeah. And so things, you know, didn't really work out according to plan, right? What happened?
Yeah. So a couple days after I graduated from college, you know, I'd mentioned I had enlisted in the Navy, and that night I was driving back from Baltimore, Maryland. I was visiting a girl I was dating at the time, and you know, it was about 2:30 in the morning, and I was driving on I-95 northbound, going from Baltimore up to Philadelphia, and I got hit head on by a drunk driver. We hit at a combined speed of 130 miles an hour.
Oh my God.
My car flipped down the highway, landed up against a guardrail, and you know, I remember all of it. I didn't lose consciousness. It was a pretty crazy experience, and you know, I remember being in the car. The car stopped flipping, and I just said, my God, I got to get out of this car, because I didn't know if it was going to catch on fire. I didn't know what was going to happen next. So I just tried to do everything I could to get out of the car. And it was the weirdest feeling in the world, because I could move my legs, but I couldn't feel them. It was very odd. And because I couldn't feel them, I couldn't really, it was a kind of a
Moves
blessing and a
improperly.
curse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
I was able to actually kick my way out of the car because I could move the legs. So I just started kicking and kicked my way out of the car and crawled across the highway, crossed 95 up against the other part of the guardrail, and just sat there and bleeding profusely,
Oh my gosh.
in and out of consciousness. And luckily a few cars had stopped and got out and helped me. And, an ambulance was there within about a minute, because apparently a drunk driver had been called in a few minutes prior to the accident. So there was an anticipation of something happening. And unfortunately I was on the, receiving end of it. And, sorry.
I'm sorry. Did the other driver survive or?
Yes, she did survive. And she actually, when the police went to look at the area, they did the questioning and everything else, they found 3 empty bottles of vodka in her front seat. And so it was, whether she drank all 3 that night, who knows? But, she was, obviously intoxicated enough for that to happen. So, they arrested her, obviously charged her with, they actually ended up charging her with attempted murder, as well as a slew of other crimes and penalties. But yeah, so I got transported to the hospital. Ended up, I'll never forget it. I was sitting there laying there, and the 2 police officers, after the trauma. Let me back up. Sorry, after the trauma unit, they were in there checking my vitals and doing everything they needed to do, stitching me up, everything else. They put me on this bed essentially and rolled me into a room. And I was laying there in the room on my back, flat, with a neck brace around my neck. And these 2 police officers looked over the bed and jumped back immediately. And I was like, what was that about? In my head, I was like, what was that about?
Right.
And
right.
I said, can I help you? And they said, I'm sorry, we're looking for an accident victim. I said, who are you looking for? And they said, I was a driver of a car that was involved in an accident. I said, what car? And they said it was a red Ford. I said, that was me. And they said, you were the driver of the red Ford? I said, yeah. And they said, there's no way. There's no way you're alive. And that really kind of resonated with me as to, how serious and bad this was. And the doctors came in, and, I had a really bad concussion. I had extensive nerve damage throughout all of my extremities, which is the reason I couldn't feel my legs initially, is because of the nerve damage. And then I lost vision, part vision in my right eye, because I had a couple shards of glass in my eye that eventually were picked out throughout my time in the emergency room and the hospital. But then I also had, hundreds of shards of glass throughout my body. And that was all from just the windows breaking and everything else throughout the accident. And the crazy part about it, and the reason that the doctors think that I survived, was because the majority of that glass was in the outside of my forearms. And the training of mixed martial arts, I think, saved my life here. And the reason is because once we hit, I immediately put my arms up as if I was getting hit in a fight. And I kept it all the way through, kept my hands up, covering my head the entire way through the accident. And all of the glass was in that area, which normally would be through the head, the eyes, the temples of victims who tend to die in accidents like that. So to this day, I 100% believe that, my training in mixed martial arts saved my life, specifically because of that. And, with that car accident came a lot of issues that I didn't foresee coming. One, I couldn't get into the military anymore because of the extent of my physical damage, the concussions, everything else. I was just kind of in this period of, I have to recover and figure out my next steps. And that's ultimately when I, started looking at different options, which led me to my first career, which was in the police force.
So Brian, I know that when you went into you joined the police academy at Prince William County and went into the police force there, you said you didn't really tell anyone about the accident at that point. Why did you, sort of keep that close to the vest?
So there was a couple reasons. One, I think at the time it was something I was trying to get out of my own head, kind of almost pretend it didn't happen. Second reason was I was in this room of police officers and all these just physically fit people and physically trained people and just mentally strong people. And I didn't want there to be any sort of sense of potential weakness. I had barely passed the physical fitness test to get into the academy because of the limitations in my legs. So, me going to the academy initially physically, I was already way behind.
Right.
And, I just wanted, I didn't want people thinking, oh, here's this guy. There's this excuse of some sort of being in a car accident and, he's going to get some sort of preferential treatment. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Those were kind of my initial thoughts. So it was two parts to it. And, a lot of it was just, I wasn't really ready to talk about, as I got closer to some people in the academy, I talked about it a little bit. But initially I just kept it close because I didn't really know how to talk about it, or how other people would react.
Yeah, sure. And so I know, going into the police force kind of went from one traumatic event to another. So tell us about your time there. What were some of the things that you saw that were, pretty difficult?
So my time as a police officer was the absolute best experience I've had in my life for a multitude of reasons. Yes, it came with some consequences, from a mental standpoint at times, previously, but from the police academy, just the discipline it teaches you,
Yeah.
it humbles you. I never really had an issue with teamwork. I was always, again, an athlete raised to help other people and all these types of things. So, but it just solidified that. It made you a better teammate. It made you really understand that you're in something way bigger than yourself. And, 6 months of the academy, which was a military style academy, one of the only few remaining in the country, really, really taught you those lessons. And it prepared you for the streets, especially where I was. They were tough. It was a tough area, really tough area. And, some of the things, you form a brotherhood with the people on the force that you can't really explain, unless you've really been a part of it. And you would literally lay your life down for any one of them, and you wouldn't even hesitate about it. And it's just something that gets ingrained in you. And, when, we averaged about, 35, 40 calls a night per officer where I was. So,
Wow.
You could be dealing with, a car accident on one hand that was a fender bender, and then go right from there to someone who was just killed in a drive-by shooting, and anywhere, in between, you name it, we dealt with it. And it was very fast paced. You had to think quick. There was just a lot of life lessons that I learned. A lot of things that, that my eyes got opened up to, that I was never saw, never even knew could happen in this world. That I saw as a police officer, that really changes you. It changes your outlook on life, mostly in a positive way, makes you appreciate things, but it also makes you realize that those things are out there. And it also makes you realize that this world is a tough place. And, there's a couple things, you'll never forget, you'll never get out of your head. I had a 4-year-old child die in my arms. I was giving CPR to a dad in the back of a house, in the most awful conditions you could possibly imagine. with his kids yelling, "Save him, save him, save my
Oh
daddy."
my God. Yeah.
And ultimately he ended up not surviving. So, you have those things in your head that, you know, that you think, "Oh, wow, did I just ruin these kids' lives because I couldn't save their dad?"
Mhm.
It's those types of things. And then, I had someone, commit suicide right in front of me. Um,
Mhm.
those are images and things that you'll never get out of your mind. And, with all those bad things though, come good, right? I know for a fact I've saved a lot of lives, in multiple different ways. And those things are very rewarding. But it's funny how you sort of forget about those things in lieu of the negative ones. And
Yeah.
it's just those types of things as a police officer that people don't understand if you're not a police officer. And it breaks my heart every day seeing, um, the the villain nature that police officers are put through these days, when 99.9% of them are the best people you could ever know and are really in it to do the right thing. And like any profession, there's a few bad apples that ruin it for everybody. And, you know, knowing what they go through, what these officers go through, on a daily basis, not knowing if they're going to come home at night, is really, really tough, for me to see. And
Yeah.
it's an experience I would never ever give up for anything. It made me who I am today. It's given me a new appreciation for everything I have in life. And it really just kind of solidifies the importance of giving back and everything that my mother and father taught me growing up.
Yeah, well, we thank you for your service. I mean, I found some pretty staggering statistics from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Nearly 1 in 4 police officers has thoughts of suicide at some point in their life. The suicide rate for police officers is 4 times higher than the rate for firefighters. More police die by suicide than in the line of duty. And compared to the general population, law enforcement report much higher rates of depression, PTSD, burnout, other anxiety-related mental health conditions. And between 7 and 19% of police officers experience symptoms of PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, compared with just 3.5% of the general population. And so, I mean, hearing about some of the stuff that you saw, those stats make sense. I know you made the transition into financial services. You went to work for Lincoln Financial as a wholesaler, and then you eventually joined your father's practice as a financial advisor there in Wayne, Pennsylvania. But tell us about, leaving the police force and what was your mental state after that point? I know you sort of you kind of hit rock bottom at one point that made you seek support.
Yeah. So me leaving the police department was probably the hardest decision I've had to make.
Hmm.
Lingering issues from my car accident were really starting to kind of creep up and get worse,
Yeah.
specifically with my physical
Physically,
limitations.
yeah.
Correct. Specifically with my back. There was one point when I was on duty and luckily not on a call, where I was actually in the back of a church, writing up a report, and my back just started to spasm, and I got out of the car, and the back was in such bad spasm that I fell to the ground and could not get back up. I was literally incapacitated. And
Mm.
that was kind of my breaking point, of, okay, what if this happens to me on a call, and someone grabs my gun, or my partner's in a fight and I can't help him, and he ends up getting, killed or injured. It was just getting worse and worse. And I just felt collectively for myself and really for another officer, it was probably best that I found, a new career essentially.
Right.
So it was really kind of a long-term health issue for me, because of my car accident. And, that's another part where like, oh God, this car accident has really kind of hindered a lot of what I'm trying to accomplish here. So I left the police force and started at Lincoln Financial Group in Radnor, Pennsylvania. And when I started there, I started on their what's called their inbound sales team. And you just sit behind a cubicle and answer a flood of phone calls all day. And some days are slower than others, and everything else. And as a police officer, you're so hyper vigilant, and you're running from these high stress calls to the next, and it's just very different. And you're not sitting behind a desk. And I would say even the first few weeks in, I noticed just I was having I was just very anxious. I'm sweating, and just very I was just very uncomfortable. And and then I kept thinking about all these things that I'd seen, and thinking about the police force and all these things that I'd kept bottled up for so long, because you deal with something, you put it in the back of your head, you go to the next call, and you repeat, rinse and repeat. And did that for 2 years. And it all just started kind of coming from the back of my head to the front of my mind. And now that I was sitting behind a desk, I had all this time to think about it. I'd come home, and my girlfriend, well, actually at that time then, my fiance, she'd want to sit down and have dinner, and I could barely concentrate on anything. I was just like all over the place mentally. And after a few months in, it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And we'd go to dinner, and I'd have to leave dinner. I'd wake up in the middle of the night having crazy nightmares. I just wouldn't go out. I was, I missed weddings with friends' weddings. There was a period there where I was not a good friend because of the issues I was dealing with. It all kind of hit ahead for me. I had finished working one day, and I went to the gym. And after the gym, I came back to our apartment. I took a shower and laid down on the couch to watch TV with Lisa, my fiance. And it was like 9 o'clock at night, and I just had a massive panic attack. It just started. And it was the worst one I had had yet, far and away. There was nothing that I could do to calm myself down. And, eventually, probably around midnight, I got a slightly better, where I felt like I could try to go to sleep. I probably was asleep for 20 minutes, woke up again. It was worse than before. And I just said, you know what, let me try and go take like another shower. I'll take a hot shower and just try to calm myself down. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I remember, this was the moment for me that really changed everything in my life. I was at this point sitting down in the shower, and I was thinking of any possible way for this to stop. And that was the first time I had thought about, actually ending my own life. And it was terrifying. I remember thinking I could just take this curtain and wrap it around my neck, and all of this would just go away. I wouldn't think about any of this anymore. And I just kept telling myself, get to the morning, get to the morning, get to the morning. I had a number of a psychologist that my doctor was telling me to talk to for, months at this point. And I just resisted it. And, that was my breaking point that night and into that morning. And as soon as the office opened, I called. I talked to him on the phone. I said, it's an emergency. I need to see it today. He saw me that day. And since that point, ever since that meeting, I got on a path of clarity. I was able to deal with a lot of the issues that were eating me from my car accident and beyond. And, it took years to get to the place that I am today. And I say this without hesitation, that he and my wife saved my life. because the support that Lisa was able to give me, being able to deal with all of this mentally, just the not be showing up for dinners, with friends, the last minute plane cancellations, and just the patience she was able to show, really helped me get through a lot of this. And you combine that with the psychologist that I saw, weekly, and everything that, the path that he put me on has just been literally a lifesaver. And, today, I could not be happier. I have a phenomenal wife. I've got 2 unbelievable daughters. I have a great family, great in-laws, everything, great career, everything is just kind of back on a path that I'm very, very happy. And, even if, God forbid something even happened, I know how to deal with certain things. And being on the police force, it's hard to see or deal with anything more stressful and emotional than what you see there. But now, regardless of what the situation is, I know how to deal with it. And it's just made me a better person. It's made me a better man. And I'm just very happy with where I am today. And I am adamant in the fact that I would not change anything about my life, because if I did, I wouldn't be where I am.
How do you think those experiences shaped your work as an advisor?
So again, getting back to not being where I would be,
Yeah.
without those experiences,
Yeah.
you know, when you're in the academy, you're taught a lot of different things. You're taught, attention to detail, discipline,
Mm.
a lot of different things. And then when you're on the police force, you really learn empathy. You have to, I still, I'll preach this to the cows come home. Police officers are asked to do way too much.
Mm.
You play psychologist, babysitter, villain, Superman, all in one shift, and learning how to deal with all kinds of different people who are in all different socioeconomic, uh, classes,
All
and
walks of
what makes
life.
them all
Yeah.
walks of life, everything. Um, Being able to learn how people, operate, and then showing them empathy, and just being compassionate, all of those things directly translate into being a financial advisor. As an
Mm.
advisor, you're sitting down with husbands and wives all day long who don't agree on, their financial situation or the way that they spend money. And that's okay. Everyone has different viewpoints. And your job as an advisor is to be able to help them come to a place of mutual understanding and agreement. And as a police officer, that was my number one job, is to get people to figure out a way to come to a mutual understanding and defuse a situation. And as an advisor, we're doing that all day long. And those experiences as a police officer absolutely shaped how I deal with people today. And, my experiences at Lincoln taught me finance, right? They taught me, I saw a lot of bad advisors. I saw a lot of really good advisors. And I was able to take a lot of these things to shape how I wanted to be an advisor. And, I think all of those experiences have got me to where I am today. And I guarantee I would not be as successful in this business had I just come out of college and said, you know what, I want to be an advisor. There's no
Mm.
doubt in my mind.
Yeah. I guess I'm wondering if you can talk about, how you got to a place of healing, after you sort of reached that rock bottom moment. And, how did the psychologist help you through that time? What kind of coping mechanisms really helped you? Because I guess I'm hoping that, people who are listening who might be, suffering from, similar thoughts, or, have loved ones with, suffering from this, can uh, find support. So I guess I'm wondering, what helped you during that time?
So there was a few things that helped me. So yes, the psychologist was a huge factor. My wife, Lisa, and my parents were
Mm.
tremendous, but specifically my father. You know, he, I, I feel I feel, everyone goes through something, I feel like, in their life. And to what magnitude, it doesn't matter. But every single person goes through some sort of struggle. And I think it's just comforting to know that people are listening. And being able to go to the psychologist just initially, he didn't really give me much guidance at first. Really for the first few months, it was more just talk to me, tell me everything. And I just opened up and told him everything. And after every session, even though I knew I wasn't necessarily getting anything back from him, I was, because he was just letting me speak and letting me just unleash all of the things that were in the back of my head and crowding my mind and get them all out on a plate for him to see, and then for us to be able to put back together and figure out how to manage it all. And, just having him there to listen. I remember coming home from there and crying, sitting next to my wife because of all these things that, it was just took an emotional toll. And, my wife was just always right there, always there to listen and just not even necessarily say anything, just hear me out. And then, my father, he was, my dad didn't really need to say anything for me to know that, number one, he supported me, but number two, that I would be able to handle this. Because I always said and thought to myself, if he could get through what he got through, this is nothing, right? I know I can get through this. And to me, it almost put it into a little bit more of a perspective of, I know what I went through and saw from my car accident to being a cop. It stinks, and it's things that people don't see every day, nor should they see every day or deal with every day. But neither is what my dad went through. And the way that I saw my dad was that what he went through was worse than mine. And if I know he can get through it, I know I can definitely get through this. So that's something I always told myself. And, during the car accident, I'll go back to that here for a second. One thing my dad said that really kind of helped me a little bit get through the accident initially was, it was only like a month after the accident. I was sitting down with my legs up. Again, couldn't really walk at all. And he looked over, he said, he walked in the room and he goes, "Oh, you're still not over this yet?" And I just kind of smirked and, told him to go, I'm not going to say it, but
I think we know where you're going with that.
Yeah. And we just kind of had a laugh, right? Because he's always been good at being able to just kind of, make things not as serious as they need to be, or just make you feel a little bit more comfortable. And, that's something I always kind of looked back on and I know he's there to support me, but I also know that that's kind of his way of also supporting you is it's just his way of kind of toughening you up. And, that was his way for my whole life. And through the mental aspect of everything, eventually when I opened up about it all to everybody, he was, the first one there to put his arm around me. So, I think it was a combination of just being able to speak to somebody at first through the psychologist, having a support system behind you, and then really having someone who went through something traumatic themselves really helped, which, is my biggest thing is, not everybody has somebody that they can lean on, and not everybody has somebody who's been through something that, they can teach you how to deal with things. And, my email, phone number, messages on social media are always open to anybody who just needs to talk, because I know that that's the most important thing. And if I can just listen to somebody and that just that moment of me listening, because they don't know who to turn to, put somebody on a path forward to let them heal mentally, then that's one person's life that I've saved. And getting back to being able to give back to people, I think me being in the position I am today, in a multitude of ways, puts me in a position to really be able to help people who are struggling. And I just want people to know that they're not alone. They're never alone, because chances are somebody is going through something that you don't even know about. And you can usually find commonality in it, and you can find a place of healing that doesn't seem possible today, but trust me, it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are struggling and suffering from PTSD in particular, and they don't talk about it. They keep it bottled up. They they don't open up about it, and that's really what they need. And so I think that I hope it will be helpful for other people. We're just about out of time. I could talk about this all day, Brian. But I'd like to thank my guest, Brian Walsh, for being on the podcast and opening up about some really painful memories and experiences that you had. Thank you, Brian, so much for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. And again, for anyone listening that needs help or doesn't seem that they can talk to anybody or needs clarity, I'm always here.
Yeah, and if you'd like to reach out to Brian personally or you have questions for him, you can reach him at brian.walsh@wnfg.com. And this information will be in the show notes as well if you want to reach out. If you yourself have a struggle and you wish to share your experiences and help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at transparencywithdianab@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to Transparency with Diana B. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This is Diana Britton reminding you that where there's healing, there's hope. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Transparency with Diana B podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of wealthmanagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you have regarding your particular situation.